Welcome to this experience where we dive into how unique experiences shape unique lives. I'm your host, Kyle Willis, and with me today I have ex-software executive, solopreneur, creator, the freaking LinkedIn master himself, Justin Welsh. In this episode, Justin and I talk about his journey from the software sales world to creating a $1 million income online with zero ads. Justin has over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, and he is helping so many people out. Justin, take it away, my man. Thank you for joining us on this episode of This Experience. With me today, I have Justin Welsh. Justin, thank you for joining me.
Kyle, it's great to be here, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Justin, I think most people, if they're familiar with our space, if they're on LinkedIn, you're everywhere. You're everywhere to be seen. And I've been a big fan of your content for the last couple of years. The way that you write, the way that you think, it resonates, I think, with a lot of us younger up and coming professionals and even folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s. So I appreciate you taking the time. I guess to start, who are you? What do you do? What do you care about?
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that, man. I appreciate it. And I'm glad to hear that what I'm writing resonates. A lot of writing is not easy, so it's cool when people enjoy it. So thank you. My name's Justin Welsh. I do a bunch of things, but I think probably in this space, what I'm well known for is I'm a former executive at a startup called Patient Pop. I was in the SaaS space from 2009 until 2019, so 10 years. 5 years as a sub 10 employee at a company in New York City called ZocDoc, where I spent about 5 years, and that was a unicorn that it grew into, and started there really early. Individual contributor, sales manager, eventually cracked the director team. Worked on some special projects there, and then transitioned over to my first VP of sales role at Patient Pop. Again, sub 10, 6 people. Built the company from its first dollar in revenue up to about a little over 50 million in recurring in 4.5 years. And in August of 2019, I stepped down. I had let my CEOs know in January of that year that I was just burning out. And so, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I did that. I had some time to think about it, which was cool. And so I started writing online. I started writing on LinkedIn because I knew a few of my friends were doing that. Kevin Dorsey was doing that, and he was working for me at Patient Pop. And so I started doing it too. And fast forward 2.5 years, now I guess I'm a full-time creator. I've got 110,000 followers on LinkedIn. My content does about almost 50 million impressions in the last couple of years. And now I do a bunch of things. I advise SaaS companies, I coach, I sell digital products, I run a private community on Discord, I'm an investor. And so that's me.
That's crazy. That's awesome. So I want to go back to, VP of sales, Patient Pop, burning the wick at both ends. You've had enough. You call it quits. What did those first few weeks look like? Like, obviously you couldn't actually write on LinkedIn for 24 hours a day. Like, what did those first few weeks look like when you went from kind of full-time doing a bunch of rigorous schedule to I'm at home and I'm writing on LinkedIn? What did that look like?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to be systematized in a lot of the things that I do. I was trained really well at ZocDoc by the CEO there, and I brought a lot of his training into Patient Pop, and then I took a lot of that out of Patient Pop and into my personal sort of solopreneurship. It looked pretty similar. Like, I'm very rigid, color-coded calendar, fill up my calendar with things to do. So it took some time to unlearn that cadence of work. Like, I worked 80 hours a week when I had no job. And it took a while to unlearn that, to get out of the cadence of working really hard and grinding all the time, because that's what I had been in. You would think I would just lay down on the couch and relax, but that just didn't happen. And so I had to unlearn that a little bit. And so for the first 6 months, I just worked 80 hours a week. And it took about 6 months for me to sit down and really organize my schedule and say, I'm going to start saying no to things that are not relevant to my business. I am going to carve out time every day to write. I'm going to carve out time every day to interact. I'm going to carve out time for my audience and on my private community. I'm going to be really intentional about the clients that I bring on in my advising business. And so I started really moving down into a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday schedule where Monday and Friday were my creative days. And over the last year, that's morphed where I've moved more towards creating. And so now every day I spend at least an hour and a half in the morning doing writing and an hour engaging with my audience. So that's how things have shifted and changed over time.
That's wild. So Monday and Wednesday, that's where you have just essentially set aside creative blocks. This is going to be me time. Nothing interrupts me here. Is there a certain activity that you're doing outside of writing where you're like, hey, the creative juices are flowing? I've talked to a few people who are like, my best ideas come in the shower. My best ideas come when I'm in the pool. Is there a certain activity where you're just like, dang, I've unlocked a different level of creativity here, and so I go to that?
It's interesting. Like the gym is definitely a place where I get a lot of creativity. Like I think we were chatting before we turned record on. Like I just do the elliptical machine. I have 2 back surgeries, so I can't do a lot of certain types of exercises. So I glide on the elliptical because it's the best thing for my back. And generally, when I'm listening to music, like ideas pop into my head. So I take notes on my phone when I'm at the gym. My wife and I like to walk at a nearby park called Shelby Park, and so we do some walking and chatting with her, like tons of ideas come in. At night, we watch a little bit of TV to end the night, and like an episode of a show might produce an idea of, for a cold email or a LinkedIn post. And so that's when I'm most creative. But I think the thing that I've tried to teach other people is to harness creativity when it hits. And so, yeah, I try and carve out writing every morning. And I think writing is like shooting basketball. You shoot, you want to be a great basketball player, you shoot every day, right? Even if you're really good, you still shoot every day. And so I write every day. But every once in a while, I catch lightning in a bottle with creativity, and I'll sit down and write 30 LinkedIn posts in one day. And other days, I got nothing. And so whenever I harness that creative energy, I just go with it all day, try and clear my schedule and just roll with it. And so that's been a real win for me.
Got it. So you'll actually create content ahead of time and then post it accordingly. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I got 36 pieces of content sitting in buffer right now that will take me through mid-August. Yeah.
That's insane. That is next level. I think when I started, like I've seen the value of LinkedIn. Honestly, one of the I guess things that played into me landing my role at Zoom Info was getting in front of our CEO, Henry Schuck, on LinkedIn. I saw the value of LinkedIn and being consistent and being in the comment section and adding value to folks. And so I've also poured into that more so though, just on a daily basis. And I'll have an idea. I'll just start typing and see what comes out. And honestly, there have been times where you've encouraged me from afar, just post it. Like, you'll write a post, you're like, hey, that's stupid, I'm not going to post that, but you should just post it anyways for the most part. What is your advice on that? Would you say, yes, press post and see what happens?
Yeah, especially in the beginning. It's just like, I just got done writing something about this where just create a ton of noise. Like people don't want to admit this, but social media is attention. Like you're vying for attention. That's what it is. It's adults vying for attention like children. That's what it is. And by the way, I participate in that. So I'm not saying that in a negative way. And the only way to get attention is to make a lot of noise, especially in the beginning. And so I always recommend that people make noise, just create, post, publish, put your thoughts out. Like, don't say anything stupid, right? Don't be divisive. Don't be mean. Don't be nasty. But share your thoughts. Like the worst thing that happens is no one cares. And if you're not creating, no one cares already. So the coolest thing that happens is that someone cares a lot. And you end up with a new job. You end up as a podcast guest. You end up speaking at an event. You land a client. You sell a course. You get followers. Like those are all positive things that happen when you post. And there's nothing positive about not creating anything if that's your end goal. So create noise and then just sort of tune in for the signal. What resonates? What gets people going? What are people engaging with? And then refine.
That's a good nugget. That's one of those wow moments for sure in this conversation. But you step out of that VP role, you work 80 hours a week for 6 months. There's a period of time where nothing happened, right? Where you just were writing and really nothing was happening yet. What kept you going?
Yeah. So I first wrote in June of 18. So I did it a year before I ended up leaving. And I wrote one post and it bombed and I never wrote again until October. And so I wrote again in October, and then it didn't do very well. And so I quit again. And then what really kept me going is kind of a boring answer, but like in January of 19, I made like a resolution to myself. I knew that I was quitting my job in 7 months, right? My CEOs knew, it wasn't a big secret. Like I had, shared that ahead of time. And so I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need a backup plan. And my hypothesis was that getting attention would be a good thing. And so I committed to writing every day in 2019. And luckily, not early, but like early-ish, I had a hit. Like I think it was May of 2019, 5 months in, I was getting maybe like 10,000 views a post and maybe like 30 reactions, everything. I wrote something and it went to 1.5 million people. And when that happened, I recognized the power of writing well. And so I got really obsessed with writing. And so I bought copywriting books. I watched YouTube videos on copywriting. I've read the Boron Letters and David Ogilvy's books and Copywriter's Bible and all this stuff. I bought a bunch of Russell Brunson books and learned how to build characters and select my traits. And I just got really obsessed with it, and I still am. So that's what hooked me in and kept me going.
So what is the main driver for you? Like if you have kind of this internal flame, like what pushes you to do what you do on a daily basis when you get up, the days you don't want to write? I mean, I've been asked that question when it comes to fitness. I also enjoy working out. I'm fortunate I can do some things, but have some health stuff that holds me back as well. Like when you don't feel like doing it, what is that one thing that you're just like, well, I'm going to do it anyways?
Yeah, it's two things. And they're just very direct things. One is I like to help people. Like if you go look at the testimonials page in my most recent course, like there's hundreds of people who are like, hey man, never wrote before, super afraid, read your stuff, started writing, having a blast, or like landed my first client, made more money, quit my job. Like all that stuff is super cool. I love that, right? I love to help people. I love helping people quit their jobs and start making money on their own. That's a cool feeling. Nothing better than getting a message about that. That's really cool. The other one is I like to make money. Real direct. Like I'm not just writing just because I love to write. It's what I do for a living. And I like to think that I'm pretty open about that online. I share how much I'm making on the course. I share how I'm putting together my emails. I take you behind the scenes on how I do those things. But in the end, like I have to make money and make a living. And, I'm not in a position where I can just do what I want to do for free. And so the two things are helping people and helping myself and my family.
That's awesome. That's very straightforward, very direct. Something I've always appreciated about the way that you write is there's no BS behind it, at least that I've been able to poke holes in, which is why I think I've paid attention. We're talking about attention, why I've paid attention to you for over the years. I guess, how would you advise individuals who are kind of bogged down with that full-time, 9 to 5? If you're in sales, everybody knows that it is not 9 to 5. It's never even close to 9 to 5. But how would you advise folks kind of build on that copywriting skill outside of, reading books, watching YouTube videos? Do you have sort of more of a system that you talk about in your courses or in your coaching that you could just put into layman's terms for us?
Yeah, totally. I have a 3-step system for writing copy. It's one of many different copywriting systems, because if you write the same way every day, it gets really boring. But essentially, content that's on social media has 3 parts. It has the middle part, which is what I call the meat, which is like the information you're trying to convey. What are you trying to teach somebody? You have the beginning of the content, which is what I call the trailer. It's like a movie trailer. And if people don't see enough interesting shit in the movie trailer, pardon my French, they won't go out and read the meat of the. And then the last is sort of the summary, right? Like, what did I just learn so that I can participate? And so I always start by writing the meat. So I write like, what am I actually trying to say to someone? So like, for instance, maybe it's top 3 ways to grow your LinkedIn audience. I'm just using this as an example. I'm going to write the 3 ways to start. Like, here are 3 things. I write that first, which is the middle of my content. Then I go up to the top of the content and say, now, how do I get someone to stop and pay attention to this? Everyone's scrolling. People scroll like 500 feet on their phone a day. there's so much noise. How do I get someone's attention? And so the trailer is how I get their attention. And generally I use 3 lines. The first line is what I call a scroll stopper. How do I get someone to stop scrolling and pay attention in 1 line? The second one is generally how I'm moving them to the third line. It's like a filler line. And the third line is the last line before you hit see more on LinkedIn. That's your hook line. You better make what's below the see more interesting. So like, want to know how to do something? It's a cliffhanger, right? Same way they use on radio. We'll tell you how after the commercial break, right? And so I write that next, and then I go to the end and I write the summary. And the reason that I write the summary is because I want people to start participating, commenting, engaging, and I don't want them to have to go reread the whole thing to remember what it was about. So I put a quick summary in the end, and then I ask them to participate. And those are the 3 parts of a post: the trailer, the meat, the summary, and then a call to conversation.
Got it. So you actually start with the meat. You then
Always.
go to the top, understand what's going to get people hooked, and then you summarize at the
Yeah.
end. That's interesting.
Totally.
And do you write in like Word docs, notes? What's kind of your preference?
I write in Buffer, and I use Buffer to send my social media posts. By this, after 3 years of doing this, like I just have a really rigid system down. So I open Buffer, I click into the post. I basically know about how long each line should be because I know how many characters are on every line. And I start writing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's clear, like you've doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on writing. You're not a big video guy from what I've seen. Why is that?
I don't really like being on video. Yeah, I don't love being on video all that much. I actually enjoy writing, and the production time behind good video is a lot. I can write a LinkedIn post in 30 seconds. Now, it used to take me 30 minutes, right, when I started, but now I've got a process down where I can write it pretty quickly. Video is like, get everything set up, get what you're going to say, get what you're going to share, get the lighting right, download it, edit it. And I just don't have time for that, number one. But number two, I just don't love it. And my theory is that if you do things you don't love, you'll be inconsistent. And so since I like to write, I might as well just do writing. Like Chris Walker does videos every day, and that's awesome. That works for him. Right? He doesn't write all that much. So I always say, do what you love because you're just more likely to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's super true. I go back to some of the posts that I've had that had the highest engagement or the largest reach, and there are these silly videos of me playing the guitar and singing a song about usually Zoom info or like being an SDR or something like that. I do enjoy that, but people don't see the time that goes into writing a full length song and like a chorus and a verse and all of that stuff. So I hear you when it comes to the amount of time. Like, what would you recommend for someone like me who, like, I enjoy writing music, I enjoy writing songs. It takes a long time. How could I chop that up into more of like a digestible format, or how could I systematize that so that I am more consistent with that type of work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the easiest way to be consistent is to use formulas. And so I use formulas all the time. I'll give you, I can probably remember all 8 of them off the top of my head. My formulas are observational, present versus future, X versus Y, step by step, contrarian, and maybe 2 or 3 others. And essentially, they're all styles and structures of content. And so when I have a thought, I have a matrix. And along the left side of my matrix, I have words that prompt me to think: entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, digital products, ego, building, attention, audience, LinkedIn, like just a bunch of words. Then across the top, I have structures. And those structures are the things that I just mentioned: an observation, a step-by-step, an analytical, a contrarian, a teardown. And I just combine the two. And when I combine the two, I'm not trying to write content, I'm trying to write a headline. And so I'll just write a bunch of headlines. And then as soon as the headline's written, then I can write the content. And so I try and dump headlines into Buffer as often as possible. And then I'll turn the headline into a piece of content. And so that's how I systematize and do things quickly. I don't know if that works for songs because I don't write music, but that's how I at least write my content relatively quickly.
And that's what you teach. That's what you coach on as well.
Yeah, totally. That's one of a bunch of different So the new product's called the LinkedIn operating system. And essentially I called it that because it's the system that I use to do the things I do every day, week and month to grow and earn income.
I think one of the differences that I've seen between yourself and some of these other, I guess if you want to call them creators, influencers, is that if my observation is accurate, I see folks try and systematize content production in any way, shape, or form, and it just comes off as fake. It doesn't come off as like what you said is your driver. You care about people. You want to help people, right? Yours, you've somehow figured out a way to do both. And like, I'm curious, is there a point that you've ever gotten to where it's like, this does not seem as authentic as I wanted it to be? Or maybe you like cut out a post because you didn't have a good feeling about it. Like, what does that process look like in your head when you're working through it?
Yeah. I mean, we
And
are all,
maybe I could even say that better. It's like when you do something for the sake of efficiency and you just lose the true value of what it is that you're actually doing. You know what I mean? Like you see people
yeah.
selling playbooks for $1. It's like, I don't know how much, like I understand the value in your products because I see your content. You're willing to talk about it openly on a podcast, but like at what point do you actually hit that ceiling where you're like, I got to kind of reel things back a little bit?
Yeah. I think everybody is struck with moments of inauthenticity. Like anyone who says they're authentic 100% of the time has already proven to be inauthentic. And so, yeah, I've definitely written things and reread them and been like, I don't really know how much I believe that, what I just wrote. Or like was going too hard to try and be polarizing or interesting. And like it came across as needy, right? Like there are definitely times where I've written stuff like that. And then I don't post it. I generally write a bunch of stuff at once and then I comb back through it, because the way you feel at night might be the different way you feel in the morning. Write a post after one beer, you get a lot more aggressive. Like it's just like all these different ways, right? So I want to make sure I go through that. But I think in the end, the reason that I think that I come off as authentic is number one, I like to think that I'm an authentic person. I think everyone probably thinks that about themselves. But number two, like I don't stray all that much. I talk about the same stuff every day and I give away everything that I know for free. If you want this operating system, you can go back, read all 3 years of my content, and put it together yourself. The $150 you're paying for it is for aggregation, right? Like I put it into a place that's really easy to find and really easy to get through in 2 hours. That's what you're paying for.
Right.
And I'm very open about that. Like any course you buy online, you can go find the information. It's just whether or not you want to get it real fast. And so I like to think that I come across as authentic because I talk about the same topics every day. I teach people how to write. I teach people how to grow. I teach people how to get more email subscribers, make more money online. And it's not like I write and then I'm like, there's a big reveal somewhere else. It's like, here's all the information. Go execute. Ideas are a dime a dozen. I can write about how to do this stuff every day. 1% of the people that read it will actually do it. And I wish 100% would. Yeah. So I don't feel all that guilty giving away all the quote unquote secrets.
Yeah, that's good. No, I like that. Do you find yourself like, is there something that you do to limit or minimize distractions? Like for me, I'm interested in thousands of different things. It feels like you can talk to my dad growing up. It was like, hey, I'm going to play baseball. I got pretty good at baseball, but soccer looks cool. I'm going to go play soccer, but actually playing golf would be really interesting. So I never was able to just like go all in on one subject. For me, writing about one subject forever seems like a nightmare. Like, how do you limit or minimize those distractions and just like stay on path and continue to push towards that one objective?
Yeah, best writers who write about one topic say the same thing 1,000 different ways. So it's not as difficult as you might think. Once you can say the same thing in 1,000 ways, then you can talk about 3 topics that are pretty closely related and have 3,000 things to say. So the way that I minimize distractions is often not very well. I'm a lot like you, but I like to tinker with technology. So like, dude, I love building websites. Like I'll waste 5 hours building a website in Card or screwing around with Super or downloading like, buying templates on Webflow and just like screwing around. I love playing in ConvertKit. I love Zapier. I love making zaps. Like I make zaps on Zapier all day long and be really happy and like trying to figure out how to automate stuff. I love all that stuff. And so I think the way that I do it is through my calendar. I am very, very calendar driven. And so like my wife writes a lot of content online, so people might know Jennifer. But if you ask Jennifer, like my showers in my calendar, my like where we're going to dinner, where we're going to lunch, what I spent my time doing, any errand that I'm going to run, anything that I have to remember, it's all in there, completely color coded and filled. And so the way that I run my life is I wake up in the morning and I look at my calendar and I follow it. And I follow it in a pretty rigid fashion. And if I want to screw around building websites on Card or Webflow, I'll build that hour in. And the reason that I like to do things like that is it's the 20th and my course launches in 2 weeks. I haven't started recording the videos yet. Most people would be panicked. I already know all the time exists in my calendar. And so having that in my calendar is a great feeling. And so that is how I try and stay away from distractions.
And walk me through how obviously this was, you're a seasoned vet coming out of SaaS as an exec, like you were trained to operate by a rigid calendar, I think, from what you've explained. Mm-hmm. When you also as an individual contributor, I also live by the calendar, right? Like you've got a demo with a customer, you're going to take it, of course. And so it's half hour to an hour blocks, back to back to back. I guess when you get to what I'm looking for in this question is for someone who isn't a seasoned vet who lives and dies by the calendar, how can they slowly implement that sort of a strategy to see the efficiency that you have today?
Yeah, I think the first thing they should do is understand how they spend their time. And so like a good week-long time audit will work wonders for people. So, all right, you get up on Monday, like, what do you do? What do you do all day? What do you do all day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, including the weekends? And I think tracking that for 1 week will give you a lot of insight into where you spend time, where you waste time. The next thing that I like to recommend is outsource, right? I don't have any employees, but I'll give you an example. You may have seen today that I announced that I'm going to include my top 50 LinkedIn posts of all time in a swipe file. And I'm going to include that in the LinkedIn operating system. And eventually I'm going to sell it as a standalone product, right? I could have spent 5 hours building that today. I could have spent 10 hours maybe just tracking all those posts down, copy, pasting, putting them into a document, I exported my top 50 from Shield. I sent it to a guy on Fiverr. I paid him $30 and 6 hours later it was done.
Wow.
No work effort on my part whatsoever. And it'll probably make $50,000 over the next 6 months for a $30 spent. And so like, that's an example of efficiency, but it's also an example of something that I would have done differently 2 years ago. I would have built that myself. And so the reason that I'm making that, I'm sharing that is because when I was an individual contributor and a manager and a director and a VP, I leveraged outside resources to get more time back. When I was VP at Patient Pop, I created a pitch deck and then I sent it to a guy on Upwork and he put it into a beautiful thing all in one day. I love using outsourcing to get administrative stuff completed or to get anything completed that isn't a good spend of my time. And so do a time audit, start to outsource things that aren't good for your time, because the time that you spend creating content, that will pay off. That will pay off in the long run. You will make money from that. You will uncover unique opportunities from that. You will do interesting things. You will build a network. All that time is well spent. Don't outsource that. Outsource all the other shit that you do that's completely meaningless. And so that's just my recommendation.
That's good. I mean, it's something that I think everybody does struggle with. I think there are more folks out there who want to share their advice, share their knowledge in the hopes of helping people. That's one of my greatest desires as well, is like, I don't feel like we were put here to just accumulate wealth, live on an island by ourselves and die. Like, I don't believe that at all, right? Like, obviously you have a very, very particular skill set. You've been able to monetize that skill set because there's value there. And I think a lot of us are also trying to do the same thing. So it's helpful to understand not just where you're at today. Most of the folks can see that because you're very candid with that. But I like to always take a step back and be like, all right, what was Justin like before he stepped into this full time? And how does his brain work? Because at the end of the day, that's really what is driving this whole thing, is a thought. Starts with a thought, right?
Totally. And that example that I just gave is new to me.
Mm.
Like, that's something I struggle with. I struggle with delegation. I struggle to outsource. I'm a control freak. I like to control everything. I'm extraordinarily controlling, and that is both good and bad. So if anyone's listening who's struggling with like trying to do too much and can't find free time, the best thing that I've done is take every process that I do and record a video of how I do it. And anytime it becomes overwhelming, I order something on Fiverr. I send the video to the person and say, this is exactly how I do this. Please do this exactly this way. And then they have video instruction on whatever task I've outsourced, and they can go complete it while I'm doing something of higher value.
Hmm. Wow, that's cool. That's super cool. Well, hey, look, we've got just a few minutes left. I want to be cognizant of your time. If you could, in 5 years, if you could just say, hey, this is where I'm going to be, this is what it will look like paint that picture for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked about this with someone else this morning. So I'm pretty open about my goals. My goal is to retire, but not in the traditional sense. I want to continue to make a good living. I want to continue to invest. My wife invests all of our money, and she's really good at it. I want to continue to, increase my wealth. That's really important to me. Not because I'm money driven. I'm actually not that money driven. I'm freedom driven. And so I want to be able to spend my time doing interesting things with interesting people without the pressure of having to earn from it. Right now, I have to earn from it. I'm 40 years old. I'm not 60. I'm not getting ready to retire. So in 5 years, I would love to be retired. And I would love to be creating content and be building courses and be coaching people, but doing it without the pressure of having to make a single dollar. So that if something happened and LinkedIn blew up and my email list fell apart, like, oh well. And so that's how I think about the ultimate end point, is like, can you do a lot of cool stuff without any pressure on your shoulders?
Freedom driven.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that a lot. And I guess if you could also just buckle up, you've got a lot of folks who follow you who may or may not write a lot, but let's talk about the folks who do write a lot. They're very open about the things that they care about. They want to take that content to the next level. Mm-hmm. How can they get the help that you provide?
Yeah, there's a few different ways, but what I would recommend, right, is starting with the one that's the least expensive. And that is the LinkedIn operating system. It's coming August 4th. You can learn more about it at linkedinos.com. So linkedinos.com. It's going to be 2 hours, 20 plus lessons, bunch of resources, 50 pieces of my best content. And if you've taken a course of mine before, like, for the most part, they got great reviews, 55 reviews on my last one, all 5 stars, 4.95 on my course prior to that, because I price them affordably and I jam a bunch of knowledge into them. I'm not trying to sell you a $1,500 course, right? Like, I'm not trying to sell a masterclass through some webinar. It's just not how I act. So go grab the course, spend $150. If you love it and you start to get better, I offer other things. I offer a private Discord community with 315 creators from around the world, all creating on LinkedIn. I've got coaching, which is expensive, and I don't recommend if you're just getting started. Just buy the course instead. So those are ways that you can learn more about what I do.
Awesome. I love it. Justin, thanks for the time. Looking forward to staying connected. Keep inspiring. Love that you just bring yourself to the table every day. And I really do appreciate your time.
Wow, man. Appreciate you having me on. It was great to get to know you, and I'll see you online.
Yeah, you bet.